Hello, everyone. I'm Councilmember Masuda, and I'm honored you are here. Welcome to our District 4 community meeting by Zoom. My field rep, Noreen Sullivan, and I wish you the best, and hopefully you're doing well and staying safe. Our office has been very busy responding to residents' questions during this long pandemic period, and we continue sending updates of our newsletters. I'm so grateful for your questions. It's easy to get our newsletters by Googling Pasadena, District 4, and request from Noreen to add your email on our list. Very soon, Noreen will be sending out the postcards for residents, to residents, for our Rose Bowl game and the Rose Parade raffle by getting on our District 4 website. I want to thank all the residents of District 4 for supporting and following the rules of COVID. For this period in time, none of us will ever forget it. So thank you for being part of the solution and not the problem. And we'll be back to normal someday. Tonight, we'll be reporting on some very important topics. And I have an announcement that was given to me, and I'm going to read that right now. It's from the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department. It's my pleasure to invite you to the 2021 Pasadena Adaptive Sports Festival this Saturday, November 20th, from 9 to 4 at Brookside Park. The Adaptive Sports Festival is free, fun-filled day of sports and fitness activities for people of all abilities. Activities offers include hand cycling, wheelchair rugby, pickleball, beep baseball, tennis, boccia, adaptive archery, boxing, power soccer, dance, and more. In addition, a resource fair featuring informative booths will be open throughout the festival. I'm excited that you can join us at this exciting event. Sincerely, Brenda Harvey Williams, Director. My friend. Okay, that's the announcement that I promised I would say. I want to report that Pasadena and in the country, redistricting is happening. Every 10 years, redistricting happens right after the census, and the population is estimated in all voting jurisdictions, like the districts in Pasadena, that are adjusted to equal the population within a 10% deviation. I want to thank the 11 redistricting task force members for a job well done. I certainly want to mention the 3 residents from District 4 serving as members on the redistricting task force. Don Nanny, representing District 4's task force member. Adriana Lim, at-large task force member. Patrice Marshall McKenzie, at-large task force member. Thank you very much for serving. Last night at the council meeting, the public hearing, we unanimously voted for the concept plan that was sent to us by the task force. And we will continue the hearing until December 6th for final approval. For this Zoom meeting, I want to thank Noreen Sullivan, my hardworking field rep, for organizing the meeting. Thank you to the IT department, the media department, for helping us with this Zoom process. I have a special thank you for the District 4 commissioners for their time, experience, and their commitment to Pasadena. Thank you, commissioners. We have wonderful speakers tonight giving presentations on important and interesting topics. And my job will be to be the timekeeper. Tonight's agenda, we have City Manager Steve Mermell, Pasadena Police Area Lieutenant Mario Ortiz, Pasadena Fire Chief Chad Augustine, Pasadena Water and Power Evan Johnson, Pasadena Director of Public Health Dr. Ying. What I'm going to try to do at around 7:30 to 7:40 to start reading questions from the residents. So let me kick off this meeting by inviting City Manager Steve Mermell. Steve, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. There's actually a rumor going on right now that you're retiring.
It's true.
I know it's true, but I want to thank you for your wonderful 33 years of service to Pasadena. Thank you for your leadership, for being a great friend, for helping me. I've been on council for 10 years. Whenever I needed help, you were there giving me great advice. And you've been a terrific leader, and you are well respected in our city. So thank you.
Well, thank you, council member.
Thank you so much. Steve, before you start, I have a question. You have balanced the city budget for 10 years, 10 straight years, including 2021. How did you do it, especially during the pandemic?
Well, I present the budget. It's the city council that's adopts it. So it's really you and your colleagues on the council who balance the budget. But let me talk just briefly about the budget. I spent a number of years in the city's finance department. I was the budget administrator for a number of years. And fundamentally, just like any business or any home, without the finances, the city can't provide any of the services that it does. So I learned a long time ago, it's vitally important for us to keep our financial house in order. And so what that means is we have to avoid getting overextended. I'm very proud that in the run-up before COVID, and we didn't really see it happening, but we had built up the city's reserves. We had 20% general fund reserves, and we had some additional money over and above that. But we knew that our expenses were rising and some of our key revenues were pretty flat. So thankfully in 2018, our voters approved Measure I. That also included an advisory measure, Measure J, to share a third of that new revenue with the school district. I'm very proud to say that since that measure passed, we've provided nearly $20 million to Pasadena Public Schools. And then the money that the city kept, the other 2/3, went to shore up our operating budget. And it put us in a good place when COVID hit and we were really losing a lot of money. We were spending a lot of money to respond to the needs of the community. And a lot of our key revenues like sales tax, parking revenue really dried up. And so that fiscal discipline that council member you have shown and other members of the council, that's what allowed us to weather that very difficult storm. And so the city is an ongoing concern. It's over, 130 plus years old. And so it's important that we think long-term. Before making expenditures, we have to ask ourselves, is this sustainable? Are we spending more than we're bringing in? You're either spending more than you're bringing in, or you're turning a little bit of a profit. I prefer the latter. And I'm proud that in all the years I've managed the budget, we've always had some additional money left over that we can put back in to needed capital projects like our fire stations, our community centers, our parks. Because the city is perpetual, we need to make these reinvestments. You can see in other cities where they haven't been doing that and their roads are deteriorating and their buildings are failing. That is not smart. And in order to maintain Pasadena, the world-class city that it is, we need to be prudent financially so we can make those important investments. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit, because I've been getting a lot of questions regarding the median on Sierra Madre Boulevard, and that Water and Power has a plan to I know they are watering the trees, but the median looks dry. So I would make a lot of people happy if you answer some questions about that.
Sure, let me do my best to explain it.
Okay.
I want to say it's a new innovative approach, but the truth of the matter is it's an old innovative approach. So what we're talking about is the median island, and Water and Power is pursuing a grant to implement, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm sorry to all of our Scandinavian viewers, but it's a hugel.
Google.
Hugel. And it's an old European horticultural technique where you take logs and other biomaterial, plants and the soil, and you form it into what looks kind of like a big ball. And that helps create, it's like composting. It helps trap water, and it creates the type of environmental situation that you need to replenish and to make an area vibrant. So
Great.
it'll catch water, and it will help rejuvenate the soil, and it will support various plantings along the median there to make it look attractive and sustainable. So broadly, it's a project between Water and Power, our Public Works Department, and our Parks Department. We're using some of the irrigation from the nearby reservoir, Jones Reservoir.
Yes.
And it's that stretch of Sierra Madre median just west of Hastings Drive and across from the reservoir.
Right.
And if you are interested in learning more, you can go to the city's website and look up Sierra Madre Median Project, or look up Hugels or Hugel Culture, Kultur, and learn a little bit more about this interesting way of reclaiming the ground that's become kind of fallow there. And we're very excited about bringing this in. I think it's one of the innovative approaches that you'll see more and more throughout the city.
Steve, thank you. I did read something on that, the Hugels, that they're kind of like mounds, and they retain the water, and it's just another way of keeping the ground moist and green. If you
Right,
have
they
some
work like
plants.
they work like a sponge, and you're right, they form a mound,
That's right.
and that creates the conditions necessary to sustain.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. And we have some more questions coming up in Q&A, so stick around. Thank you. Okay, now next we have Pasadena Police Area Lieutenant Mario Ortiz having a report on police matters and maybe like crime. Lieutenant, in other parts of our city, there has been gun violence, even people in cars, shooting people in cars. What's the reason for this violence?
It's very complicated. I wish I could give you put my finger on it and give you one answer, but it goes much deeper than just the police department itself. But in short, what's going on right now is that at least for the residents that are listening, the good thing is that that much of the shootings that are occurring, unfortunately, are gang related. So I'm the weekend lieutenant. I've been the weekend lieutenant for about 1.5 years now, and I cover our service area 1 and service area 4, which is district 6 and 4. Even as right now, as I speak, Lieutenant Tagliaretti, who is service area 2, the Northwest, she's in a community meeting right now. So to answer your question, we have a group of individuals that are reaping havoc in the city, and they're repeat offenders. We go through this cycle of gang violence, and unfortunately, the frustrating thing about it is that a lot of these offenders are not doing very much time in jail, and that's the deeper issue. And so credit to our detective section and investigators. I think they're some of the best in the business. And currently they're working on these shootings. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the weekend lieutenant, so I'm typically here Thursday through Sunday. And lucky me, I'm usually the one that's here when a lot of these violent issues are occurring. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, over the course of the pandemic, and there's been an uptick in a lot of fraudulent crime dealing with the financial aid and monies that are supplied. So we have an increase in gun violence because of an increase in guns. And a lot of them are ghost guns. Basically, they're unregistered weapons. And the availability and access to these weapons has gone up tremendously. And I can't tell you how many times a week, we average anywhere from 3 to 4 guns a week. And most of them occur during a routine traffic stop, whether it be a traffic violation, DUI, whatever the probable cause is. We've about 3 to 4 times a week, we're averaging a confiscation of a weapon. Here's the issue though. We take these people to jail for the gun charges and they're out within a day or two. The courts are establishing a bail amount of sometimes down to $1. So we're arresting people for gun offenses and they have a warrant for their arrest for a prior charge. And that warrant is only $1. So we're battling the same individuals. And fortunately, we haven't had, at least recently, we haven't had innocent residents that fell victim to this. It is the gang members attacking each other. I can tell you that over the course of the last couple months, there has been several shootings that involve African Americans. As of late, we've had Hispanics versus African Americans. And so we're trying to make sense of this. I talk to my gang detectives all the time, and they're out there doing their intelligence and trying to figure out who's who are the players, what addresses they need to target or focus on, get other city entities involved in terms of the property owners, the residents, the renters, and things of that nature, parole, probation. So we got a lot of people working on this, and it's just a complicated social issue. And I wish I could give you a better answer with regards to how we're attacking it. Tonight, I have my regular deployment of patrol personnel. I also have our neighborhood action team that are out there. And I also have 2 extra cars of detectives that are out there. We're monitoring such locations as Jackie Robinson Park. We're putting ghost cars out there. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically we're putting vehicles out there so that's visible to the public. And we're trying to make or get the community to be more involved. We haven't had much cooperation with a lot of these gunshot victims. And so whatever the reason is, whatever the riff is, when we try to sit down with them or interview them, they're not offering any cooperation.
I see.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it's right now it's just, and I've been doing the job for 30 years and we've had different cycles. And as of late, this has gotten pretty bad and we're trying to get a hold of it and we're working really hard around the clock.
Right. Well, I do know that crime is down in Pasadena. That's what I read, but we still have our areas that we continue to have crime. So how do you address that?
Well, with regards to your district and what we call Service Area 4, there's been an uptick in robberies and assaults across the city in general. But fortunately for your district and Service Area 4, that hasn't really been the case. We've had 1 assault with a deadly weapon, and that individual is in custody. And we've had 2 robberies, 1 armed and 1 strong arm. The one that was involved a weapon, that is still an open case. The strong arm robbery involved a transient, and that person is in custody. So a vast majority citywide, but particularly in this service area, we deal with thefts. And I can give you a list of names right now where the top locations. We're talking about Home Depot, Rouse, Denny's, Target, Northman's Rack, and the shopping centers on the east end. That's where a vast majority of these thefts are occurring. And as I mentioned before about the gang violence, so too holds true for thefts. And we got a, I haven't seen it this bad in a long time. And so we have a population, homeless population that occupy our city, and it's not just Pasadena. I mean, it's everywhere. And so they're repeat offenders, and they blazingly go walk into a department store, take things, and our officers respond, and they go to jail to be out within a day or two. A matter of fact, sometimes maybe within hours. So that's the issue at hand that we're trying to solve. I use my volunteers routinely to go out there and maintain presence in the community. I assign my officers to handle certain problem locations that may occur in the service area, in addition to our enforcement. And a lot of these department stores, they have their threshold set such that they're not willing to prosecute if it's a certain dollar amount. And so that, one example is, like I mentioned, Service Area 1 or District 6, we had the same individual break into the Salvation Army 6 times within a week. And to do it again, and we take him and we place him in custody, and he's out right after. So these are the things that we're battling. But with regards to District 4, we're doing pretty good. We've had some an increase in commercial burglaries, but there was one restaurant that was victimized twice within an hour, and a couple of the burglaries involved shoplifting, as I mentioned. So it's just a matter of classification. And but overall, we have a pretty good handle in this service area. And like I said, a lot of it stems from the Foothill corridor, the Colorado corridor, that has to do with the large shopping centers and the repeat offenders that are doing thefts.
Well, thank you so much for your report, and I hope you're around for the individual questions that we're going to be saying.
I am the watchman tonight.
Residents.
The radio was on in the background, so I apologize if there's
Okay.
background noise, but
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, next we have Fire Chief Chad Augustine. Hi, Chief.
Good evening. Good evening, Councilmember Masuda. Also want to thank you and Noreen for the invite. And I'd also just like to thank all of the District 4 community members that are on tonight. It's really a privilege to be able to be here and talk to the community.
Well, we're really pleased that you are here. And I'm going to start you off with a question. Noreen and I are so impressed with your port team that works with our homeless community for services, and the team is getting so much success now. How is the port team able to achieve that kind of success?
That's a fantastic question. And for all of our community members, I'm going to assume they are familiar with Port, but if they're not, I'll just do a quick recap. That is the Pasadena Outreach Response Team. And it's a 3-person team that's made up of a social worker, a public health nurse, and a firefighter. And really, like, if we look across the country, jurisdictions all over the country are really struggling to find a model that works to provide services to our community members that previously would be in the 911 system, and they would either get a fire and EMS response and taken to an emergency room, or they would get a law enforcement response and taken to jail, neither of which really identified the root problem. And then in comes our port team, which I love to be able to brag about it too, because they provide amazing service. And they've been able to do that really by building trust. They build trust in the community, and they've gotten to know the members of the community, many of which were previously service resistant, many of which are our unhoused community, and many of which are dealing with some sort of a dependency issue or a mental health issue. And their primary goal is to remove any barrier to service. And when they do that, they're able to get those previously service resistant individuals enrolled in whatever service they need. And they've also been able to do that not just by building trust with those residents, but also with our community of medical professionals that provide the services. And that's really where Port has been so successful. They have the contacts, they're able to match the services with the needs, and then day by day they come in and they remove barriers. And it's removing those barriers which gets those individuals to success.
Thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about your concerns for our district, where the tough areas are. And I assume that it would be like in the Upper Hastings, the Sierra Madre Villa area because of the hills.
Yes.
And I'm concerned about wind and fire.
Absolutely. And when I came into Pasadena, I've been here about 9 months now, and there's a few really high threat areas, one of which is in your district, and then one on the west side, the Linda Vista area, that as we look at our fire modeling are extremely high threat fire areas. And so we've been working aggressively on developing evacuation plans within the community, and using really good fire modeling so that we can tell how fast a fire is going to spread, where it's going to go, and then how best to provide messaging so that our residents can safely evacuate. And so we will continue to be doing that over the next 1 to 2 years. As we look at California, this year is 2021 is probably going to go down as the second worst fire season in California history. And we've burned over 3 million acres year to date, and have lost over 3,000 homes and other structures, and have had multiple loss of lives. Southern California really has been fortunate in that to date, we haven't had the mass fires that Northern California has had. But as we look north of Sacramento area, the Dixie Fire, the Caldor Fire, we've had massive fires that have really just devastated communities. And so what we recognize is up and down the state, nobody has enough resources. And so we need to have good partnerships, which we do here in Southern California and up and down the state. And then as a community, we need to make sure we're prepared. And Lisa Derderian and I, we love Lisa D, but we really go, anybody that will listen to us and invite us to talking about evacuation planning and having a go bag, being able to be prepared for 72 hours with those essentials, a little bit of food, water, clothing, a little bit of money, just the things that if right now you had to evacuate, what would you need to be self-sufficient for 72 hours? And I always like to make the plug for our furry friends. I'm a dog lover, so don't forget about having the essentials for your pets and other loved ones, whether it's dog food, cat food, their medication also, that's equally important. They're part of our families.
Oh, great. Well, I have a rabbit.
Perfect. We'll make sure we grab the rabbit and the rabbit food.
Equal opportunity for everyone, right?
That's correct.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. And I'll be available for any follow-up questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, next we have from Pasadena Water and Power, Evan Johnson, and he's going to talk about the new charging stations in Pasadena. Evan, I know the demand for charging electric vehicles is rising. Where do you estimate the demand in 5 to 7 years?
Hi, good evening, Councilmember. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, we've seen a very large amount of growth in Pasadena over the last few years in electric vehicles. We saw about a 2% of electric cars for the cars that were bought in Pasadena were electric. And then in 2020, about 4% of the cars that were purchased by residents of Pasadena were electric. So it doubled over a 1-year period. The state of California has a new law that's going to be in place that's by 2035, all light duty vehicles will have to be electric. So we're going to see a huge amount of growth in that market going forward in 5 to 7 years. I have a short slide presentation to give you guys.
Oh, I look forward to seeing it.
So I will kind of explain more about what we're doing through the presentation.
Sure.
All right, next slide, please. So here's the big question about electrification, about why to go electric. And the city of Pasadena has a climate action plan that's in place to kind of help greenhouse gas emissions to have better air quality here in California. And one of the ways that water and power can help is to help with electrification of vehicles. The transportation sector generates one of the largest shares of greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the best ways that we can help reduce that is to have cleaner fuels and cleaner ways to transport ourselves going forward. Next slide, please. Here's kind of the overall areas of different types of GHG emissions. As you can see, the transportation sector is the largest one. So we want to try to go forward by reducing that amount here, getting the low-hanging fruit and trying to make a huge push for that, because it's kind of something that we can do now. The technology is here now where we can actually go forward with that. Next slide, please. Here's a list of our recent projects and things that are upcoming that the city has already completed, also things that we are in progress doing, and also the next couple of items that we have coming up. As you can see, we've done some of our city yards already. We've had a few of the garages done around Old Pasadena, and we are now working on our parks, trying to upgrade by putting in charging stations at our parks so people can come drive their electric vehicles and charge while they spend a few hours enjoying the natural resources that Pasadena has to offer. Next slide, please. Here are a few pictures of our most recent Arroyo EV charging depot. This is right down by the power plant, just before the entrance of the 110 freeway. These are a few pictures of the construction process and then kind of the final picture once we're done with the project, but it is now open for charging. It was a joint project between us and Tesla, and there are 20 Tesla charging stations, and then we have 6 that are owned by the city itself. Next slide, please. Here's a project that was completed last year. This is called the Morengo Rooftop Charging Station. And it was also a project done in joint by Tesla and Water and Power, where we have 20 stations and Tesla has 24. And it has been doing a lot of great charging. We have about 20,000 sessions every month charging at this location. Next slide. You can kind of see our growth from this year. It kind of flattened out during the pandemic when people weren't really driving too much. But when things kind of opened back up, we've definitely seen a month-to-month increase over the amount of charging that gets done by the Pasadena-owned stations. Next slide, please. Here's kind of the good and the bad. As you can see, Pasadena has a lot of charging. We've done very well about putting in charging stations, both with level 2 and level 3 charging. But it is also centralized and located mostly in Old Pasadena, Long Lake, along Colorado. And what we really want to do is kind of expand that to kind of be more equitable around the entire city and branch out, which would include kind of our park projects. So we definitely want to expand the locations from it just being a central location to being it more spread out evenly. Next slide, please. And go to the next slide. And here are kind of the incentives right now. So the one good thing about electric vehicles right now is that there's a lot of incentives to purchase an electric vehicle. There's a lot of good options right now, and going forward, there's going to be a lot more options in the future. I think now there's more than 25 to 30 electric vehicle choices, but they're going to have over 200 within a year or two from different vehicle makers. They're coming out pretty rapidly with the new exciting trucks coming out by next year. As you can see here, there's quite a few different ways to get rebates. Pasadena Water and Power has rebates not only for electric vehicles, but also for charging stations, if you want to put them in your home or multi-unit dwellings. And then there's also state grants as well as federal ones. And I believe that's the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to Victory Park's charging station. Do you know what that's going to be? I know it's going to be kind of like near across the street from the school. Isn't that where you're going to put the charging units, or is it going to be near the parking lot?
It's going to be inside the parking lot.
I
On
see.
the very south side of the parking lot, we're going to put in 25 stations with
Oh,
3 of those
good.
being level 3 and then 22 of them being level 2.
I see.
And we're very excited to have that start.
Tell us the difference between level 2 and level 3.
Sure, of course. Level 2 charging basically takes a few hours to charge a car fully. It can be between 2 and 3 hours roughly to fully charge a car level 2. So it's a great location for a park. Level 3 is more of a quicker, faster charge. They call it DC fast charging. And the goal there is to kind of get someone to fully charge within about 30 minutes or so.
I see. And the last question is, what's going to be the charge cost?
Sure. As of right now, Water and Power is not charging anything for charging at all. So right now, we don't have a single Water and Power owned charger that we charge for. We are looking at different rates. Those will come out. We're looking at what's reasonable and what kind of charging will help with the adoption of electric vehicles. That's our most important concept right now, is trying to get the adoption of electric vehicles going forward.
Well, thank you so much for your report, and I hope you stick around just in case there's a question for you.
I will be here. Very excited to
Okay.
answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Next we have Dr. Go, Dr. Ying Go. I saved her for last because she has reported to the council many times, and we just don't ever let her go. She can speak hours on the subject, and some of the council members take advantage of that. So, Dr. Go, I have control of you ending by a certain time by getting you to give you a little warning to kind of end your comments, so that way you won't be here all night. Okay. Dr. Go, before you start, Pasadena is doing very well with our recent COVID numbers that I saw. Do you expect a spike in COVID this winter starting during Thanksgiving?
Well, the answer is that we've started. So I'll show you that on a chart, and let me share my screen so that we can take a look at this visually. So these are the trends as far as you can see on this. It's called an epi curve. The time is across the x-axis horizontally, and then the number of cases on the y-axis going vertically. And you can see where we are on November 14th with an uptick in this country. This is US, these are US cases over the past couple weeks, probably 2 weeks. And then this is California data with a graph on the right showing also an uptick in that black line. And then on the right, you can see.
Dr. Go, I don't see your
No?
presentation.
Okay, let me try this a different way. Oh, I'm not sharing it yet. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. You can see that, right?
I can see it now.
Okay, good. So you can see the red line for the US numbers kind of trending upward on the far right. You can see on the left, the California graph with the black line trending upward. And the last little bump there was from the summer surge, not little, significant bump from the Delta surge. And on the right is kind of the breakdown of the percent of cases by age group. So here's our Pasadena numbers. And you can see the top graph that was in the summer, that was our bump there in July, August from the Delta surge. And then we started trending downward for a little bit into August and October. But then after Halloween, our rates have gone back up again to about 12 cases per day. And that is about not quite half of where we were last summer, but it's a slow but significant increase in cases, such that for the CDC tiers that we were using to see how we're doing, we were in moderate transmission for a little bit. And now we've bumped up to the next highest tier, which is substantial. And this is the same in LA County. They are in substantial transmission. The bottom graph represents the number of death reports that we've gotten for COVID-19, the number of community members that we've lost due to COVID-19. And you can see on average, we're at 0 at this time but we are getting reports now that we are investigating of 1 to 2 new deaths just this past week. And that's what we see when we see cases go up. Unfortunately, we see some folks pass away from COVID-19. This is our vaccine dashboard. Actually, the date is more recent than the first. It was probably last Tuesday's numbers, which are very good. As you mentioned, we are at 85.5% of Pasadenans fully vaccinated. That's of residents 5 and older. And we have seen a nice response with our 5 to 11-year-olds as far as getting vaccinated. And so even though it's not increasing at the pace it once was, it still continues to tick up, especially as more people become eligible. And so that brings us to who is eligible and who really should get vaccinated. There are a couple groups, but we'll start with this, which is the 12 to 18-year-olds. The data that we've seen now shows that of adolescents who are hospitalized with COVID-19, 97% of them are unvaccinated. That is the case with adults, probably to a greater degree, 99%. So it is really important that everyone who's eligible to be vaccinated for COVID-19 get vaccinated. We started about a week and a half ago with, once the vaccine was approved for 5 to 11-year-olds, our clinics for kids. And you can see one of our staff people here who is an excellent management analyst who also used to work as a clown professionally, and she brought her balloon supplies and was twisting balloons. Mm-hmm. And it was a really festive, kind of rowdy atmosphere for the health department because we had a lot of families and children in who were so pleased to get their shots. Here are some of them. And we have 8,000 children between 5 to 11 in Pasadena. That's a significant population. The people who are getting COVID are mainly people who are unvaccinated. And those are the ones who are most at risk for worse outcomes. And so that includes children. We're getting them vaccinated now and hoping that this will help keep them in school, keep them in sports. And as we gather for the holidays, which we'll talk about, that will keep our families safer. So the big news is who should get a booster dose? If you're in doubt and you are 18 or over, if you are 6 months past your primary series of shots, you should get a booster shot. The state is now changing their messaging because the CDC put out some very confusing messaging some weeks ago about who's eligible, who it was recommended for, who could get it if they wanted it. Now it's changed. Well, we think that the FDA and the CDC are going to catch up at the end of this week. And then next week, hopefully the CDC will come out with a new statement to match California and some other states that are saying, if you think you'll benefit from getting a booster shot, I encourage you to go out and get it. You can self-determine your risk of exposure and you will not be turned away. So I think just a couple last slide about what to do next as far as choices to make for yourself. As we head into the holiday season, we really ask people that if you are symptomatic, if you think it's just allergies, which I thought I had last week and it confirmed that's what I had, but I did get tested anyway on Friday because I just wanted to make sure, because of the thousands and thousands of people that we've interviewed who thought they had a cold, they thought they had allergies, and they went out to be with other people, or they went to work, or they went to school. And if you just get that test, then you will have that information and you'll be much safer in doing what you're doing. And we have lots of testing available, so I'll give you that information. Mm-hmm. Please reduce your risk over the holidays. Don't travel until you're fully vaccinated, or I recommend you get boosted. And please take a test before you travel and get together with family members, especially if someone there is immunocompromised or at risk or unvaccinated. And then after you come back, I also recommend that you get tested 3 to 5 days after you're back. Ensure the people you gather with are symptom-free and fully vaccinated. Consider testing, I mentioned that. If you can take risk mitigation measures, then do it. In addition to vaccinating, gather outdoors. And if you're in close proximity to a lot of people from different households and you don't know what their vaccine status is, wear a mask. And if you are at high risk, I recommend, if you can't take all of those mitigation measures, to not go to high risk activities, such as 40 or 50,000 people in a venue, indoors or outdoors. Again, you don't know their vaccination status. If you're looking for travel advice, you can go on the CDC website. You can see here, they say, be sure to check what the situation is, where you're going. Don't travel if you're sick. Don't travel if you've tested positive for COVID. Please don't do that. If you're in quarantine because you were not vaccinated and you were in touch with someone with COVID, please don't travel. And then after your trip, please get tested. So if you want to share some of this in a kind of nice format with your family members because you want them to take all the safety measures that you're going to take, you can use a graphic like this and just highlight some of those things, like making sure you're fully vaccinated, making sure that you get tested before you come together.
Mhm.
And then I do encourage you, when you get your booster shot, or if you haven't gotten your vaccinated yet and you decide to do that now, that there is a after vaccination health checker called vSafe. It's an app. You can sign up for it on the website, CDC website. And I've done this for my whole family because I really feel it's valuable to provide information about my health status after I get my shot. It asks you on a different time frame, like I think it's every day for a week, just to fill out 3 little questions like, how are you feeling today? Are you having fever, nausea, etc.? Were you unable to go to work? And then the next day it'll ask you some of that. And we use this database for information about what side effects people are having. So the last slide, testing is still free. If you go to our website, you'll see that you press that green COVID-19 testing button and you'll see a whole list of places where you get testing. Some locations will charge your insurance. Some places like urgent care facilities will charge a cost. But these 2 locations are free, and the Chap Care location is available every single day, including weekends. And we have ample capacity. So I invite you to please get a quick, easy PCR test. There's hardly ever any wait, and it's easy to do. You just sign up online. Thank you.
Dr. Go, my niece invited my wife and I to their home for Thanksgiving, and we declined because it's still sort of scary. We both had our booster shots, but that's how we feel right now. We're still using the knuckle thing to shake hands and and to kind of play it sort of safe, and then of course we protect the other person as well. So I thank you for that report, and to protect. Everybody should try to protect themselves and their families and their friends. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So we have come to the point where we have some questions. And Mr. Mermell, are you there? Are you there? You are. I have a question. I have a lot of them. So for the homeless, the panhandling, and even a little scamming of people using funerals as to pay for funerals and having signs up there as well. So if the chief, if the fire chief and city manager, and perhaps is Lieutenant Ortiz still there by any chance? Answer those questions about what do we do about the panhandlers, the homeless people that are on corners begging for money, and the scams of trying to give money to people with signs saying to donate to a funeral for someone.
Sure, let me start it off. So homelessness is, I think, the most intractable problem for local government, particularly in California. LA County has, they say, at least 60,000 homeless people. My sense is it's even more. The reality is the courts have not been very sympathetic to cities when they've tried to enact laws to prevent panhandling or to prevent people from essentially living in the public right of way or in parks. So over the years, Pasadena and other cities have attempted to enact laws that prevent panhandling. We tried one not that many years ago as it related to aggressive panhandling, and they lose in court. Someone will come by and sue you, and the court is going to support the free speech rights of individuals to panhandle. Mm-hmm. And if they're holding a sign, if it says it's for a funeral and there's no such funeral, no one's going to be able to charge them successfully with fraud. You heard the lieutenant talk about people who are committing felonies that the district attorney either doesn't charge. Every time someone gets charged by the district attorney, if it's their first offense, they're always sent to diversion. It's no bail. And so panhandling is so far down the list that at the district attorney level, they won't touch it. And we're fortunate in Pasadena to have our own city prosecutor, but even then they have to operate within the boundaries that the courts have established. And the courts in California and in other places have pretty much said people have a constitutional right, First Amendment right, to essentially solicit. Now, earlier today, we were talking about some of the median islands, because I know in your district, there's often complaints about the people that stand on the median. And there's concerns for their safety because there's cars nearby, but people camp out there and they will solicit. We are exploring some physical alterations that we might be able to make it, frankly, impossible for people to stand on those medians. That's one way to deal with it. Just through design, make it such that they won't want to stand there or won't be able to. But as far as the activity itself, it's very difficult. And I will tell you that not everybody who's panhandling is homeless. And not everybody panhandling in Pasadena lives in Pasadena. The gold line was a great thing for our region, but it does allow everybody, including homeless people, to move back and forth. And I know for a fact, because I know who some of them are, I've seen people, it's not all of them, but it's a few, who at night go downtown LA, but then they ride the train up in the morning and they have a sign and they hang out in Pasadena. And they hang out in Pasadena because they do better. People are nice, friendly, and they give them money. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't continue to panhandle if people didn't give them money. Mm-hmm. They panhandle where the people are because that's where the money is. Right. So for all of our viewers, for you, and please tell your friends and your neighbors, if you don't give to the panhandlers, if you don't enable them to stay there, they'll find somewhere else to go. Yeah. The city has resources to assist people who want to get off the street and get into some form of housing. They don't need your $5 or $10. That just keeps them on the street another day, guarantees they'll come back. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the HOPE team earlier. The fire chief deploys the HOPE team. I'm sorry, the port team. We have HOPE teams in the police department. We work with these people. Sometimes it takes a long time to build trust, but ultimately we can cajole a number of them to accept our help and take housing. That's really the solution. I don't know if the chief or the lieutenant would have any more to add.
I want to hear from both of them. Lieutenant, you want to start, or Chief, do you want to start?
Sure. The city manager did a complete and accurate description of the issue at hand. Just for all our viewers, I just want them to know that when they call, we will respond. And unfortunately, a high percentage of our calls for service have to do with transient or mental health. And so I wish it would be as easy as just pulling up to the corner of Lake and Maple or wherever the intersection is and having a conversation. But it doesn't always work that way. We're dealing with mental health issues. We're dealing with uses of force and trying to de-escalate. And so as mentioned before, working with the city prosecutors, trying to get restraining orders or stay away orders if we do have repeat offenders. But unfortunately, it's a daunting task right now. We're out there every day, and it's not, if people feel that they're being ignored, trust me when I say this, we respond to every call that comes in. Unfortunately, it may not have the end result that they want, just because, like I said, we're limited as to what we can do. Another thing that comes into play is taking someone into custody. Well, we also have restrictions in-house and within our jail facility. So oftentimes, if we're dealing with medical issues, things of that nature, we can't house them here. And so it gets even more complicated. And then we're taking officers off the street to transport to a different facility because of medical issues. So it becomes a big balancing act as to, okay, we have these felonies on one end, and then we have the misdemeanors on the other end, and which ones, do we take to jail? So.
Thank you, Lieutenant Ortiz. Chief, what do you have for us on the issue of
Echo
homelessness?
Lieutenant Ortiz and Steve, City Manager. Gosh, I think Steve said it perfectly. But what I will say is, we have 2 full-time port teams that go out and are working with our unhoused community on a daily basis. They may engage somebody 40 or 50 times over the course of multiple months before they're finally willing to engage in services that are available. There are numerous services available within the city. And as Steve said, our end goal is to get them enrolled in services and housed. Because if they're dealing with a dependency issue, a mental health issue, it's really tough to work through that if you don't have consistent housing. But unfortunately, many of these individuals are service resistant, and it just takes time and going back to the building of trust and frequent interactions to get one person at a time enrolled in services. But we'll keep at it. And if there's somebody that we're missing, we're happy. Tony Z and Hutch and both of our port teams are out on a daily basis, just really trying to provide services they have a heart to serve.
Well, thank you so much for working on the homeless issue. And I know that we're trying to do what we can. But, you know, when I got on council 10 years ago, our homeless numbers were, I think they were close to 1,200 homeless people in the community. I think we're below 600 today or thereabout. So I think we're doing a better job. But what I like about what you're all doing is you're working with the homeless one-on-one and trying to have a success story, trying to earn that trust so that way they can be housed and get off the street. So thank you so much for that. I have 2 questions more. I have one for you, Steve, and whoever else wants to jump in. It's about density. And this is from a question that I got today, because we were getting these questions, and like I said, a group of them was about the panhandling and the homeless. And that was a bunch of them. This one is, why is Pasadena allowing building homes, apartments, when there is water restrictions on existing homes? That's for you, Steve.
Sure. I love when people ask that question. It's a fair question. The water situation is complex and complicated. The drought conditions persist far beyond the scope of the city of Pasadena. It is a regional problem for the entire Southwest United States. And there obviously needs to be a greater investment in infrastructure to try to deal with the issues. And hopefully, you know, as weather patterns change, we can figure out better ways to store in the good years to have availability in the difficult years. So people then translate that to local development. And they say, well, geez, if there's a drought and there's not enough water, why should we continue to build anything in Pasadena? Pasadena is the best city, but a relatively small city in the grand scheme of things. We're sort of a mid-sized city in California. There's recognition that there has to be some level of growth based on increases in population and movement of people. But frankly, there really hasn't been big increases in the city's population, frankly, over the last 2 decades. We're growing a relatively small amount. We are seeing new housing units built because we're getting a little more dense in our urban core along transit. We're continuing to protect our single family neighborhoods. But the water use with new multi-unit housing is a fraction of the water that's used with your more traditional single family homes built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that have relatively large lots and a lot of irrigation. I didn't bring the chart with me today, but compared to 2005, the per capita water use in Pasadena is way, way down. And we can share that chart with the council member's office. He can send it out in a newsletter. Every year, Pasadena residents are using less and less water as they move to more xeriscape type landscaping. They change out old inefficient appliances. So we're getting much better with our water use. We get 60% of our water from the Metropolitan Water District. They have indicated that we can continue to serve Pasadena's needs. So if you accept the fact that there is going to be growth, it is, in an absolute terms, better to have the type of growth we're having in the city than to push that growth, say, into the Inland Empire. As you're driving out east, if you're heading to Palm Springs or somewhere else east, and you drive through the Inland Empire, what do you see? You see these big box houses, 4,000 square feet with some yard. They're not using water as efficiently as we are here in Pasadena.
I was told that we're using water at the level of the 1950s. Is that correct?
That could be. The chart that I have, I think, only starts at 2005. But per capita use is way, way down. People are much more conscious about it. There's a lot less waste.
Right.
The city's doing what it can as well to reduce its usage. We're exploring the use of non-potable water for irrigation. We have some high nitrate water in the city. We'd like to shift to that for parks and the golf course. So we're being much more conscious about our water use.
Thank you, Steve. Dr. Gold, if you're there, how are you? This is a question from a resident, and I'm just taking parts of a very long question, and almost a page and a half. It says, I generally think that Pasadena has done a respectable job at addressing the needs of citizens during the pandemic. Then it says, going down, what are the metrics by which we will be able to dial back some of the restrictions like masking? And then the last part is, at what point will we ever be safe enough for the city to announce an optional masking mandate for personal safety and not a one-size-fit-all approach?
It's a good question, and one that we're constantly thinking about, because we would like to only have restrictions that benefit our community. We don't want to have extra restrictions. And at this point, we hardly have any. Really, if you think about everything that's been removed, there are no capacity restrictions, there are no physical distancing restrictions. There's just everything's been taken away in order to allow our economy to thrive again and allow our people to live their lives, work, and socialize. The only main restriction right now is that in order to have all of that happen with no limitations, is to have the indoor masking in place. Now, some of the indoor masking orders come from the state, and some of them come from the federal government as well, like on transportation, airplanes and such. And in schools, that's from the state. And then we have our local masking order, which was put in place when we were going into the Delta surge. What we've really been waiting to see is for us to come out of that surge to a nice low level of cases. For example, in the CDC framework, there are two tiers. One is low and one is moderate. And right now, as I mentioned, we're in substantial. And I don't know if we're going to head into high for the winter. But what we're looking for as far as metrics in order to allow the indoor masking order to be lifted includes a very high rate of vaccination. And we have done a great job there. I think that box is checked for us and it will continue to increase. We are looking for ample hospital capacity, and that number is set at a county level because our healthcare system is not a city hospital. It's really regional and countywide. So that number is at 600 or fewer hospitalizations, probably for a stable amount of time. And then, and right now, LA County is above that number. They're in the 600s for daily hospitalizations for COVID-19. And then the last metric is, well, there are two things, but the main metric is number of cases in our community. How much spread is happening, and how risky is it when you go out and live your life? And right now, as I mentioned, we're in substantial, and we would like to see a stable decline into moderate for at least 3 weeks sustained in order for that order to be lifted. Finally, we really hope that we don't have another variant soon that's introduced into our population for which we don't have immunity because our vaccines aren't effective enough against it. So as long as we don't have that, we could consider moving toward not having indoor masking everywhere. And in fact, some settings, for example, if everyone's vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and it's verified, then potentially we could have mask removal in that setting indoors.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to, well, first of all, we're actually on time. And I want to thank all our presenters for doing such a wonderful job informing the residents on so many topics and answering a lot of the questions. Thank you, City Manager and Steve Mermell. Thank you, Police Area Lieutenant Mario Ortiz. Thank you, Pasadena Fire Chief Chad Augustine. I'm sorry I didn't have a question for you, Evan Johnson. You're having electric charging is not controversial enough to have you someone ask you a question on it, but thank you for being here and giving us the information about what's coming down the road with our charging stations. And of course, Dr. Go, Director of Public Health, always thank you so much for your information. And you know what the thing is going to be what's going to happen in a few weeks, because again, you know, this what you're involved with, it's a moving target, and hopefully it continues to get better. Again, I want to thank Noreen Sullivan for always helping the community of District 4. You are the best. And thank you to our IT department and our media department for helping with the Zoom community meeting for District 4. And lastly, I want to thank the residents of our district for your contributions to our district and our city. Good night.